Welcome to the No Streetlights podcast. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Tim. We'll be engaging in stimulating conversations every week.
We want to encourage societal growth towards kindness through understanding.
These conversations and the associated language can be triggering.
Listen at your own discretion.
But please reach out if we need to be doing something better.
So, let's take a breath, relax, and be welcome. Leon, welcome, man. It's so good to see you.
Yeah.
Last time I saw you, we were what, 12?
Oh, God. Yeah, man. You were 12. I was like
35. I think you've gotten younger over the years, Leon.
I think so too.
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
My belly doesn't. My increasingly growing waistline doesn't suggest that.
Well, your videos would disagree because you still look shreddy as can be.
Yep. Look, man, all you got to do is continue getting more and more tattoos. The more ink you have on yourself, the less people notice anything else. They don't care.
That's why my next couple pieces are like all belly pieces, so I can just look like a fucking gangster and no one can say shit about having a belly.
Fuck yeah.
I didn't realize that you were tatted yet, Aaron. And I took a closer look at your guys' like avatars, or your like the cartoon avatars that you guys got made. And I was like, well, holy shit, like Aaron's got tattoos now.
Oh yeah, I'm going straight to hell.
Yeah.
I've got like 15 tattoos. It'd take a while. I got a whole sleeve done. My boy Mondo just finished it up. He did fucking sick work.
Nice.
To Brittany's dismay, because she had to redraw our logo like 5 times.
It's true.
Kept getting.
It's gonna get worse because I'm filling out my left arm, and then she's gonna have to deal with that.
You got that sick Michael Myers piece, dude.
Are you totally covered yet, Leon? Do you have the bodysuit? Or do you have real estate?
You're pretty fucking close last time I saw you shirtless, which was about 3 years ago.
It wasn't that long ago. It's coming along, man. I got most of my back done. It's like, I don't know if you all have ever heard of Zdzisław Beksiński.
Is that the artist that you were telling me about last time we talked about tattoos?
Yeah.
The one where you got the inspiration for the neck piece, right?
Yeah, that's my neck piece too. He was a World War. He didn't fight in the war. He didn't serve, at least not to my knowledge. But he was like caught up in all of the chaos and the strife. He was whatchamacallit. He was just basically like a survivor of the fallout between the conflict and stuff.
He passed away recently, right?
He's been dead for I think you're thinking about Mariusz Lewandowski. My God, he was incredible, man, too. He was phenomenal painter, man. The surrealist horror.
Yeah, his was like kind of reminded me like post-apocalyptic horror.
Yeah, very, very much. Yeah, dystopian. Yeah.
So our audience may be wondering how we know Leon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Tim, how did your relationship with Leon begin?
Leon was a very interesting person. The first time I ever saw Leon was in 9th grade. I wasn't in 9th grade. He was in 9th grade. I think I was a grade underneath you, Leon. So I was in 8th grade. So I was still trying to figure out what kind of person I wanted to be and kind of getting into a bunch of stuff. And I remember seeing one of the teachers I disliked yelling at this student for being unruly in some way, shape, or form. And I look over and I see this guy who's a little bit taller than me wearing these big-ass black combat boots, jorts. I'm pretty sure you were wearing jorts. A leather jacket, and you had long-ass hair all the way down to your ass. And I was like, who is that? And my buddy Chris was like, oh, that's Leon. He was like, yeah, I'm friends with him. And I was like, man, it must be awesome to be friends with somebody who looks as cool as him. And then I went into high school a little while later and got introduced to Leon in person because you played Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, what? I was like, well, if a cool guy like this plays Dungeons and Dragons, it's got to be a cool game.
It is.
We got to know it. Yeah, I love Dungeons and Dragons. Still love it to this day. Just don't play it as much as I wish I could.
It's kind of crazy to think. I look back on life sometimes and I'm just like, man, like, have I really influenced people in a positive way? But you're sitting telling me now, like, I got you guys into or I was kind of like the gateway or whatever for some of that, you know, which is pretty cool to think about.
We don't notice the ripples we make until well after we make them.
Yeah, for sure.
It's crazy too, because you also were a huge influence in me getting into the music that I like. And that's kind of where your life has continued moving on, is in through your music. Can you kind of tell us like what it is that you do, Leon?
I am the vocalist and lyricist for a band based out of Charleston, West Virginia. We're called A Fitting End. We play like really extreme metal. It's like orchestral deathcore, I guess is what most people are calling it.
That's fucking sick.
It has like those symphonic background samples accompanied with the heavy metal instrumentation, drums, guitars, bass, all that fun stuff. And, you know, screaming aggressive vocal styles and stuff like that. Like it's kind of like trying to deliberately distort your voice in a manner to where it doesn't sound like a voice anymore, pretty much. It's kind of like trying to get away from trying to sound like a regular voice as possible and trying to sound like an animal.
Now, your most recent single was a song that came out about 3 months now, right? It came out in August?
1st of July, yeah.
And then the music became available on all streaming platforms and everything. And because I waited forever to add it to Apple Music. Your single was called Puritanical Inquisition, correct?
Yeah.
That music video is sick. Just you and the boys having fun in the woods.
Yeah.
Dude.
Dude, the Jurassic Park shirt.
Yes, dude.
It's Dynor, bro.
Yeah, Dynor.
Yeah, it's the same. It's kind of like my calling card in a way.
Because how people recognize you. You're a Dynor. That's how we've always known you, too. You've always been a Dynor since I came to know you.
Basically, the way I kind of attribute it is like I scream. That's what I do. Like in my off time, screaming my heart out, basically, to identify as like a Tyrannosaurus Rex seems appropriate, you know?
I know you said your music is very cathartic, that you feel as though this like really heavy metal symphonic thing is just a very pure cathartic experience for you.
Yeah. You guys were asking me yesterday, like, if I could go on to play different genres. Like before, I probably couldn't, but I would say probably now, like with the more time I put into actually singing, I could probably go on to explore different territories. But for some reason, like I've always kind of gravitated towards persistently staying on metal just because I feel like I haven't fully stretched my legs out yet. Like I've recorded songs before with previous bands, stuff that's never been released. I've been in 2 previous bands before, and probably between all the breadth of work that I've recorded with those 2 bands, I could have been already done vocals on like a whole album at this point, but it's never been released, you know? So it's like, I still feel like even though I've been in this world for years now, I feel like I'm just now stepping out and creating a portfolio and like work to show people. So yeah, it's like, if I feel like I'm still starting, but also, you know, since I am starting, that there's so much left to tell for me in this genre. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I find super interesting, whenever I first got to know you, you were in a band back in the day too. That was kind of one of the big introductions that you gave to me whenever it came to like getting into the extreme metal, and the bands like Behemoth, Blood Red Throne. Those were a lot of bands at the time that we had talked about. And I was really big into Cradle of Filth. I don't remember why I liked them so much.
Oh no, dude. I'm a big Cradle fan now. Yeah. I love the black metal, like the UK black metal sound.
I still think Danny Filth is phenomenal. His harsh vocals I find are very good.
Yeah. He's got that very distinct high pitch banshee wail. It's hard to replicate that for sure.
Whenever you had first started getting into the music scene though, back in the day, the band that I remember you were a part of was called Mortuae. Am I correct?
Yeah. All one word. Yeah.
Remember that group? Was it the same?
I remember I asked you to make, what was it, like a logo?
Yeah. Back when I was a Photoshop hound and I knew how to do Photoshop a lot more.
It looked pretty good too, man. It actually turned out pretty good. It's just we couldn't.
I just remember how difficult that was. Because I was trying to make it look realistic.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We probably would have ended up using it too. It was just, didn't take off. You know what I mean? The band never took off.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said you feel like you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle twice.
Well, not twice. I've never had, probably just trying to catch it once would be great.
Yeah, heard. I'd be okay with one bottle of lightning.
I'd be, just give me a bottle. No, wait, that sounds like alcohol. I don't want alcohol.
You've already tried that, Tim.
Yeah, that didn't work for me. Whenever you were doing music back then, like what drove you to want to get into the music scene? You know, whenever we're talking about the catharticism from being on stage and performing and kind of having that outlet for you to express your angers or anything to that effect, was that kind of what appealed to you whenever you first started in the metal genre and wanting to be in a band? Because here we are. We've been friends now for what, like 13-ish years now, Leon? No, longer than that. It's probably about 15 years.
Yeah, man.
16, you're 30 now.
You've been doing music pretty much the entire time.
Yeah. Well, there's been plenty of lulls, you know what I mean, where you're not doing anything. Actually, whenever I concluded with that thing and finally just said, this isn't going anywhere, it might have been 5 or 6 years after that when I finally got an actual band to play with and actually started to spread my wings, so to say. And actually, if you all don't mind, like moving really far ahead.
Not at all.
I really feel like up until that point, I have sort of like a tumultuous relationship with that first band. There was some complication there.
Oh.
Bands are like everything else. You know what I mean? They're held up by people, you know? And I shared with you guys that Mike Patton clip because in the midst of that interview, he was just like, the worst thing about music is that it's played by people.
Yeah, man.
So it's like, you have to work with everybody and stuff and be on the same page. One of the sort of common sentiments that's expressed is you're married to like 4 other people.
Right.
And if the relationship don't work, then the band don't work. So you better do what you can to kiss and hug and kiss your bros and all that stuff. Music doesn't pay well especially when you're starting out in, you know, certain areas where I live. It's kind of, especially for the particular, you know, genre of music, it's a struggle, man. Yeah, you always have to balance it with work and a sustainable income if you want to keep that door open and that dream alive.
Yeah.
It's hard. You have a life you have to take care of. You have bills and things you have to do. I mean, if playing a show would pay you like $150 each and you guys were guaranteed at least 3 shows a week or something, it'd be different, but it's hard.
Yeah, it's a struggle. The last band that I was in, Necronic, we were starting to pull some good money for playing shows. Pretty decently. And there was a moment there where I was thinking like, you know, maybe we got our sound down and we have the right group of guys and, you know, this might be it. We're starting to play big shows, starting to play with bigger headlining bands and playing bigger venues and stuff, pulling bigger crowds. And for a moment there, it looked like everything was sort of snowballing in the right direction. But, you know, how life works during that time, towards the end of it, my mother had come down with her cancer diagnosis, and I kind of basically put off band. I told the guys like I need a month or so off to take a break, kind of reassess things, and they kind of kept doing their own thing. But it just seemed like whenever I walked away from that to take that time off, that was basically it. It just kind of seemed like I didn't mean to deflate the energy that was going on, but you know, whether or not I meant to or not, it's just what happened.
Well, you had to deal with personal things, and I'm sure the music wasn't the number one thing that was pressing on your mind at that time.
No, if anyone has a problem with you taking care of your mom, they can take it up with me. I suggest they let that marinade.
Those guys they're all cool. Necronic, like all those guys are fantastic dudes, and I got nothing but love and respect for all those guys. I didn't have any sorts of ill treatment or any kind of drama like that. They're all a bunch of, I kind of regard them all as like a bunch of happy-go-lucky stoners, pretty much.
Hell yeah.
I love that. Best kind of people in metal.
You met a lot of them, Tim, whenever you came over for that Amalja practice that we had. You remember that?
Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of that group. I honestly thought that was still a fitting end. I was looking back on it. I was like, I think I've met all these guys.
No, a lot of those guys that you met that day, most of those guys came from my last band that I was in, Necronic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was Jared and Justin and Joe and stuff. All their names start with J.
Oh God, maybe that's why you weren't a fit for the band.
Yeah, I had to leave.
An L is close to a J, but it's like backwards. I don't.
Should have
get it.
named yourself Gion instead. Jeez.
Should have, man. I don't know what I was thinking, dude.
I would love to take it back a little bit since we did jump ahead.
Yeah, we jumped quite a bit there.
I want to let people know the Leon I was introduced to.
Yeah.
So the Leon I was introduced to was a 10th degree ninja black belt who had spent 50 years alone in the desert of the Arctic mountains. The only time he ever ate was when he ripped out the hearts of wolves that his master taught him how to rip out. And so I met him and I was like, that looks like a normal fucking dude. And Chris was like, yeah, it's my neighbor Leon. And I was like, he just told me he was in the desert for 30 years. And he goes, he's like 15. I was like, okay.
Yeah. You might have exaggerated a little bit. No, I'm joking.
It was a good time, man. It was a good fucking story.
That's why I was suited to be more of a dungeon master, I suppose.
DMing is great, but playing is also quite fun.
Yeah, about that, we talked about that yesterday. I wanted to make sure, and I was kind of sort of easing into that earlier about I didn't ever know who I was, and I didn't understand at the time. I was suffering with like an identity crisis where it's like I felt like I needed to be someone better than who I was, because I felt like at the time, my life was just very mundane, very trivial, very.
You felt like Leon McGreggor wasn't enough.
Yeah, basically, that's a pretty good way to put it. I guess I felt like I needed to overinflate and like create pretty much a fiction to impress people around me and stuff like that, and put up like a wall.
I understand that perfectly. I have built so many personas over the years that I fucking get it, Leon. I've done the same exact thing. That's why I read fiction. This reality sucks, so I'd rather be somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely better forms of escapism than creating fiction and living out a false narrative that we paint for ourselves in our minds.
I do think reality is better than any fiction we could create.
For sure. I'd prefer to be more grounded in reality, but I do appreciate the escapism. There's good forms of escapism and there's negative forms of escapism. So I found Dungeons and Dragons and video gaming, and I have an appreciation for the arts.
Yeah, it sounds like you love art.
I still read a lot, nonfiction and fiction, and I love film and stuff. Music, of course.
Weren't we just talking about you being like a metalhead?
Yeah.
And you're covered in tattoos, right?
Yeah, I mean.
But you like read books and you love movies and you're like just a normal person?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's fucking insane. You gotta be shitting me. I used to hate everyone with a leather coat and a mohawk.
You got a neck tattoo. How on earth can you be a normal person?
So you like want to be loved and respected and seen and...
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Oh, God.
It certainly would be nice. And I suppose that was a lot of where kind of the early strife I was going through whenever I was younger, suffering with some sort of identity crisis and trying to put on these airs for people. It wasn't until I first stepped on the stage and somebody gave me my break to like show me what I can do, what I am capable of, and like took a chance on me basically. And I put it in the work and I wrote my own lyrics. And actually at the time, they weren't my own lyrics at the time. I was performing other people's songs, but I was the only goddamn person to play those songs live.
Sounds like you were doing some impressive shit.
Yeah.
But no, man, it was like, it just felt like for the first time I was finding myself and who I really was with music. And you were asking me earlier, Tim, about what's the attraction to metal.
Yeah.
Like the aggressive tone of it and stuff. I believe that it's very appealing to a lot of people who feel disenfranchised or people who feel like they don't have a voice anymore or people that are struggling with most of the people that I've met playing shows and listening to other bands and like getting to know other people from different bands and stuff, not even just other bands, like just audience members and stuff like that. People identify with this music. They identify with the messages in it and the meaning in it, and they empathize with it and they relate to it. And I don't know how much people empathize with the lyrics I've been writing about with this first EP.
It sounds like music is the tool for you to get back to yourself, because Melissa talked to us about getting back to yourself is what happens when we heal, is we just become our true self. So it sounds like you're finding out who Leon is, which is wonderful, and you're using your music to do that.
For sure.
Do you have any songs out that you can tell us some of the lyrics? Because to me, I think metal interests the disenfranchised because you have to try to understand metal, and therefore it's kind of like the reciprocity. If you understand them, they understand you, and that means that you're seen.
Yeah.
Tim, did that resonate with you at all?
A little bit, but almost the opposite in a way. One way that I've seen how people, and this is mostly an online thing that I've seen, a lot of people, they become more attracted to music a lot of the ways because it's a sound that's extreme. It's different. Kind of what we were talking about with the vocals that you were talking about earlier, Leon, and the guitar with the heavy distortions and the low drop tunings and the double bass pedals on the drums, the China cymbal. And everybody knows what a good break. People in the metal community and rock community, they typically know what a good breakdown sounds like, and it almost brings out this animalistic, like kind of like this feeling, you know, where it's like you're expressing primal, whatever emotion or something you got going on. But another thing is it's a difficult genre to get into. Almost like if you get into this music, you're rebelling in some way, shape, or form. So I feel like a lot of people become attracted to it in a almost rebellious way.
I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there is the rebellion aspect.
Tim, could you screen share, audio share, and play that clip that Leon sent us? Just so people understand what we're talking about, this being so primal and how it reaches in and touches your soul, because it is hitting your hind brain. So people understand what we're talking about if they haven't listened to A Fitting End or Leon yet.
I hope you guys have some Faith No More fans. Anybody that knows Tomahawk or Mr. Bungle or...
If you know who Leon is talking about, stand up right now.
We will find you. I'm going to play this clip real quick, okay, Leon?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that shit is sick, man. Dude.
I'm a huge fan of your previous single, Puritanical Inquisition. I loved it. In fact, remember our conversation about like your vocal techniques, because I could hear the change. Being a fan of the genre of music that you are performing, I could hear that you were doing a different technique. We kind of discussed it, and you kind of informed me of what you were doing new. And I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was incredible. Seriously, dude, keep it up. Like, you're killing it.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah. It's come a long way from just doing like the one note technique, which is what I always used to defer back to in high school. It's really...
Is that just yelling? Is that what that is? Is that what I do?
Fry, right?
I guess it would be like just kind of like a mid-tone. Kind of like that.
Yeah, I don't think the mic could get that properly, unfortunately.
No, that means you hit the right like frequency for the mic to not pick it up consistently. That's insane to think about.
I guess that's why it's not a good to only do the screams through the professional recording condenser microphone. So
it's kind of funny you mentioned that, because whenever people talk about black metal, good black metal has to sound like it's been recorded on a potato in the middle of a Siberian winter. with no electricity except for a toothbrush. And I always laugh really hard when I think about that because it reminds me of Metalocalypse, and I'm a huge Metalocalypse fan, and I just always think about like Squizgar Squiggle in the middle of the winter playing guitar on a potato.
Yeah, that's always a funny black metal stereotype about the bad production value. Everything just sounds like shit.
It just sounds like garbage.
It's a charm, you know. It adds to the charm.
It really does.
We've got to
though.
stop mastering. We've got to stop editing.
It literally sounds like it's recorded on a busted Walkman. It's phenomenal, man.
Have you heard it? Have you heard it yet, Aaron?
Black metal?
Yeah, just in general.
I've probably heard black metal.
I was just wondering if you knew what Tim was talking about, because he's fucking right, dude.
No, I understand. There's a bunch of music that, like, the shittier the quality. That's why I personally love vinyl records, because
Dude, there's a massive vinyl resurgence going on right now.
Yeah.
the way that sound fits in that groove and then gets read, it's pure. It's exactly what the person is doing.
Yeah.
It's like using a French press. You're just going to get the taste better for me, personally.
It's analog music, which is, if you want to listen to music in a more pure form, going analog and listening to a vinyl record, it's an experience. Mm-hmm. I like it. I listen to analog music or vinyl records quite a bit, but not a lot. Most of my music I digest in a digital format because it's so much easier. And technology has just made it to where digesting in an analog format doesn't really work as well. It's a shame, too, because there's no way to properly transfer that analog sound. Because even if you plug in your record player to your computer, and then rip that music to your computer and then listen to it, now you've created a digital version of your analog song, and now there's going to be loss to the audio.
No, there's definitely like a massive resurgence for analog music and content now, and it's definitely interesting to see unfold. I know like a lot of the bands nowadays are like doing specialty vinyl offerings and stuff, like limited edition vinyls and stuff. And it just depends on if they're backing it up on the quality. You know what I mean? Like you can't just put out a vinyl. Like you have to go all out with it. You know what I mean? Like you have to have all the artwork, all the crazy, artwork.
Do you think you will record analog or?
Well, I'm sure at some point we will. It's more of an enthusiast market. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's always going to be the enthusiasts out there that are going to have that next level appreciation to own like these other outlets of the media, such as vinyl and whatnot.
These different mediums.
Yeah, mediums. Yeah. So it's more of an enthusiast market.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are absolutely right. Like everybody's just going to keep, just for the ease of access and the convenience of, owning everything on digital. It's hard to, we're never going to go back to where we were before. But I wanted to go back to the rebellion aspect.
Please.
Right, yeah.
Whenever I was younger, I grew up pissed off at a lot of things. A lot of people don't know this, but my dad, he was on his way to becoming a pastor, pretty much. He was like studying and all that stuff. He was on his way to becoming a pastor. And then he met my mom, and he ended up deciding that wasn't his life. You know what I mean?
Right.
He ended up marrying my mother, and then he had us kids, my sister and I, and he was taking care of my half brother. So as I grew up as a kid, I found out that my mother and father, they would get into these very contentious, heated debates and arguments and stuff about religion. Okay. Because he is very like staunchly Old Testament. You know what I mean? He believes in, in Armageddon and all this stuff. My mother, she believed that when Jesus died on the cross, that at that moment he saved us all from sin, and that there's not going to be an end times, pretty much. They would constantly have this fight, right? At being exposed to that at a young age, my sister and I, we seen like all the dark sides that religion had to offer, pretty much, and like none of the positive to it. We were exposed to the combative nature of it, the tribalism, the different, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it already gave us a bad impression. So as I grew up, I took this out into the world, and I was still young, not like fully grown up, obviously, but I was like a teenager. And when you're a teenager, as you do, you're like very rebellious, very rambunctious. You want to kind of wage war with the rest of society in a sense. And I wasn't any different, like I was definitely fell in that groove. Like I hated where I came from. I had like a bitter resentment towards this state. I hated the people that lived here. Like I thought that they were all backwards, and I was carrying all these stereotypes in my head.
Cognitive distortions.
Right. I was carrying all these stereotypes in my head of like what I thought West Virginians were like, and that they're all like redneck and backwards and, all these things. And I had religious stereotypes and whatnot. I used to consider myself like an anti-theist. So I was like super fervent in my anti-religious sentiment,
Yeah.
I think that feeds back into why metal was so appealing to me, because it was this niche community of people that had mostly the same types of gripes that I had, mostly filled with people that were atheists, non-believers, whatever, or they were just outright like anti-theists, hated God. Some of them saying we're Satanists, all these things and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like a community that I related to, searching for camaraderie.
Yeah. We need fellowship.
I do want to point out too, a lot of the music that you had showed me at the beginning, and I've already mentioned a little bit of it, like Behemoth, Blood Red Throne, a lot of their music is almost anti-theist, as you were stating, kind of like Behemoth leans into the more against God aspect and everything.
For sure, yeah, they're straight up blasphemous, without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, that was my first introduction into that type of music. And I still listen to Behemoth a little bit to this day. And my favorite song by them is "At the Left Hand of God," which I always found that song super fascinating and liked. And there's a Blood Red Throne song that I still listen to. It's funny, right? Because like I'm connecting all these pieces of what you're telling me, and just knowing how we were when we were younger and like the things that you would show us and everything. I find that so fascinating. I did not know, but Dad was almost a pastor. I didn't know about his intense like knowledge on religion. I honestly don't think I'd ever seen your mom and your dad actually fight. I always saw issues between like you and your dad. Like that was kind of the thing. I remember your dad would like tell you to go do something or whatever. There's always a lot of like.
I want to make it clear so that no one gets any wrong impressions. Like that, there was never any abuse in my household or whatever. Like I grew up in a trailer park whenever I was really young. And then I think I was like a toddler or so whenever we finally moved into my grandmother's house. Yeah. Through all that, like there was never any crazy abuse. It was always just arguments, about faith and different views and things like that. And
that doesn't make it any less traumatic to a child.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's why we were talking yesterday, our conversation was coming to an end. You mentioned something that I have no knowledge of because it's outside of my sphere of control. I had to correct myself later and tell you what my intentions were, what I was trying to convey, which was if some shit's out of my control and doesn't really affect me, I don't need to know about it because there's so much within my control and I have so little control that I really have to be here for it.
All right.
So my recommendation, if you are two parents arguing about whether or not the world's going to end, maybe look at your kid and maybe realize you're making their world end by fighting each other in front of them. Maybe just love each other and your kid. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
You're good. No, you're probably right. I see some truth in that. Going through that, I really feel like has influenced where I'm at now, obviously, because growing up in that kind of environment where you're living with people that have like these fundamental disagreements that sort of infighting, I'm kind of at a point in my life where I just want to get it to where people aren't, even though we can disagree. I suppose if I had any kind of message to convey, I suppose, I want to see more sanity restored in not just the country, but the world. I'd like to see kind of like the tensions and stuff where everything is just kind of like this rising pressure, and it never seems to dissipate. Like there has to be a pressure release valve that we can just kind of squeeze and let it dissipate, bring down the tension. I'd like to see an off ramp with some of these things.
I find that interesting that you mentioned this too. I feel like you've seen this on a small scale between your parents. I don't want to make an incorrect assessment here, but you've seen what the infighting can happen on a smaller scale between your parents and just in your household. And you're seeing that also now that you've grown up. You see the exact same thing, but you see it on a larger scale worldwide. Infighting and a lot of issues and a lot of people having fundamental disagreements, which is causing problems. I find that interesting because there's so much growth that has occurred as a child growing up, witnessing the disagreements between your parents and, you know, living in that life to a point where now you can take what you have seen and apply that to the world and see where the problems are essentially coming from. And that's a lot of it to do with just fundamental disagreements. Think about how much problems could be avoided if people just simply weren't angry at the other person for being a different religion than them.
There's a word here. One of the gentlemen that I follow, try to listen to, Peter Boghossian, he kind of coined this term, epistemology. You have to be able to sit down with someone else and recognize that they may be coming from a completely different set of values, completely different set of morals, completely different. And you have to be the first one to empathize in order to start bridging the gap.
You've introduced me to Jonathan Haidt recently.
Yes, moral foundation theory is
yes, and one thing that he was talking about how America is raising fragile children, I find it very interesting. One of the things he talked about was tribalism and how tribalism, we're using it in an ineffective manner in order to essentially separate humanity. Because the way he described it is whenever we create a situation where we have this ideology of us versus them, we have effectively made it impossible for us to come together as a society, because now we're looking at it
in group versus out group.
Yeah. And one thing that he mentioned too is like, if we want to create a society that's more inclusive, we need to start looking at the things that we have in common versus what we have different. Let's praise what makes us the same. And then that'll allow us to be able to come together as a society. We won't be nearly as separated. There won't be us versus them. It's just going to be us.
And I love that you used the word sanity, Leon, because you're saying that when you're walking the path or you're like aligned with objective reality, you realize that what you're doing is good and moral and ethical. So when you're walking your path, you know you're doing the right thing, because when you step back, you can see that it's objectively what you should be doing.
Well, I will say that the goal is to try to be as impartial and as fair as possible. You know, we all know that in human nature, it's almost impossible to do that.
Human nature is flawed to an extent, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Attaining perfection is nearly impossible.
Right. But the idea is that you want to try to hear everybody out, hear where they're coming from. And the thing is, I feel like I may be in a unique position because like I kind of understand and empathize. I used to like have problems with where I come from. I used to hate West Virginia, used to hate my country, used to hate the religions that, you know, my parents were practicing. Mm-hmm. Used to be like vehemently anti-theist, all this stuff. And just over time, you know, I don't know if you could call it like, oh, Leon just mellowed out because he got older, man. You know what I mean? He lost.
Grandpa Leon.
You lost your edge there, buddy.
He gave up the revolution, you know. I just don't know if I'm empathetic and I can hear those perspectives out because I know what that feels like. You know, I was like full on the Bernie bandwagon and stuff. Used to like identify as a socialist. So I really kind of moved in a weird direction, but I totally get it. I look around and I just see so much fighting and so much chaos, and the mobs and stuff is really kind of worrying to me. And it's kind of strange because a lot of this stuff is actually in the lyrics for puritanical inquisitions. And like a lot of the stuff that I've been sort of studying in my downtime and in my off time, it's been influencing like the lyrical content within my music.
What's your favorite lyric, or do you have a favorite lyric yet?
Before I read this, I just want to preface that this is metal. So it's like everything is kind of couched within extremes.
It's art and metaphor.
Yeah, it's not literal.
Here's what I wrote. These are lyrics for the new song that's about to drop. An autocrat ascends to the throne, believing himself to be benevolent and pure. Are we so different from him? I'm not so sure. I'm not quite sure. For you see, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The red dawn dwells in the hearts and the minds of the naive and ignorant. Hammer clenched within fist to enforce with totality, and a sickle to cut apart families. A tyranny of mediocrity suppressing all success, only to invest in the dead. Mass graves, unbridled human potential thrown to waste. Mass graves, a compost heap of the dead. What makes you think you know better? What makes you think you can do better? And carving out a utopia. That's where the name came from.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
There's a few more stanzas, but you got the idea.
But that's a beautiful talking about how 8 dudes control more wealth than 3.6 billion people, and how all the governance and systems only benefit the old and the dead and the dying, and those of us that are living are just living off scraps. So I saw some stuff about, your childhood and stuff in there, but that's my perception of the lyrics. It's lovely what you're saying, and it's a shame that people aren't willing to listen because you're going,
That was a great impersonation, Aaron.
You wouldn't know it, but all that political philosophy is woven in there somewhere.
yeah.
I found whenever I was listening to what you were saying, but I heard kind of more along the lines of whenever you were talking about the aristocrat ascending to the throne and then investing too much money. Autocrat, yeah. Investing too much money in the dead, and then the sickle and the hammer were obvious references to communism. I mean, that's kind of what I gathered from it.
Yeah, it's a screed against communism.
So I found it very interesting because I was hearing it more along the lines of like ruling is hard and people who do rule suck at it. That's kind of what I gathered. That was how I interpreted the lyrics that you read. And you don't have to explain it because it's your lyrics after all, and I feel like it's if you want to give us an explanation, absolutely. But if you'd rather people to create their own reasonable understanding of how the lyrics are, or what they're supposed to be about, that's.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. It's basically just a screed against communism.
Yeah.
Essentially.
I'm into the extreme metal. I find the lyrics and everything super fascinating always.
I was kind of like criticizing the idea that people get this notion that they think that they have the answer, like they are the moral arbiters or the ethical arbiters for creating a just, functioning society and stuff like that. But it's just like, dude, like all this stuff has been tried. You know what I mean? Like, so many times before, like communism has been tried like so many times before. He's like, so my question is like, how do you think that you know better? So that's where the line comes from.
Right. What I really like, we kind of delved into this moral conversation now, but what I really like about everything that we've been saying and everything that you kind of do, whenever Aaron and I talk about our spiritual health, mental health, and physical health, that spiritual health is there's always an asterisk next to it. And I think Aaron did a good job of explaining that in some way, shape, or form, whenever you are focusing on your spiritual health, you're filling that particular void with whatever it is that you need in that term of spirituality, whether that be your major belief in Catholicism, Christianity, whether or not you're a Buddhist, or whether or not you're you're waxing philosophy over there and reading and expanding your brain, which it seems to me you fill that spirituality regardless of what your actual specific religion is. And I know we kind of talked about
it doesn't matter
that you've kind of almost found yourself back into a religious mindset where you used to believe you were antithesis, and now I think you were saying you stepped away from the idea of being antithesis and atheist even.
Antitheist.
Yeah,
I meant to kind of carve this out a little bit with you earlier. Where I'm at now is like I have kind of grown in appreciation for the lessons that are contained within the Bible and some of the traditions. There are good aspects to it, and to not just Christianity, but like all Judeo-Christian philosophies and religions.
Yeah.
That applies to Islam, the Jewish faith. So I don't harbor, nowhere near the ill will. I think the only issue, once again, it just comes back to the tribal tensions has always been kind of like where my lens is at in terms of like, where my attention is focused.
When it comes to the sense of religion, you kind of hold on to and I agree with you here, each religion has moral lessons that can be taught if you read through the stories in the Bible and any of the other religions. I mean, look into any of the religions. They all have good moral foundation in a lot of their stories. And I think that's what you latch on to. You are a moral and ethical, in a way, philosopher in this sense. You find yourself intrigued by it, you read into it, you have yourself on a moral path, an ethical path, and I love that. And I think that fills in for your spirituality, and it's incredible.
The philosophy stuff has definitely been seeping into the lyrics.
Yeah.
So I spend most of my time reading it. So it's kind of like, how do you keep it out of your music at that point when it's like influencing?
Right.
It's like an influence on your life so heavily. But like, you brought up Jonathan Haidt earlier.
Mm-hmm.
There's tons of stuff like his moral foundation theory, like the framework of it, like the different pillars of moral foundation, the purity, sanctity, and all these things. Like you can go through the Bible, really any religious text, and just go through and be like, this moral pillar applies here. You know what I mean? Like a lot of it is sanctity, purity, because they place a high value on purity.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
All religions are just different points of view pointing at deity. I don't care what you call a deity. I don't care if you deify yourself to where you think that your ultimate purpose is being the best version of you as possible. It sounds like you are trying to become the best Leon without becoming a narcissist, which is how self-deification should work, theoretically.
I would say that that's almost impossible because...
I would agree. Enlightenment is nearly impossible.
Yeah, well, the issue is that for musicians, like this is a weird tightrope to be kind of walking, to be like, oh, I'm a musician. And I know I have to record music and play on the stage and have that big persona. There is that egoist. You have to be a little bit of a narcissist. You know what I mean? Like I'm totally real with it. I don't think I've ever put on, well, I did before whenever I was younger, but I'm kind of at the point now where it's like I'm completely self-aware. I know who I am. I don't make any bones about it. In order to do what I do, like you have to get yourself in that fucking mindset, like before stage, like I'm the king of the world,
Yeah.
If people kind of sense differently on stage, it's kind of like throwing blood out to a sea of sharks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like walking a tightrope between like how much narcissism is too evil, or it's like too bad, or it's too corrupting, compared to like I have to be impartial, have to be try to be as neutral as possible.
I think it's kind of a simple answer to a complex problem. You have to build yourself up. You have to put that mask on before you go out on stage. But that's all it is. That's all it is. At the end of the day, once you leave that stage, you remove that mask and you go back to being Leon. But when you're on stage, not only is it acceptable from an audience point of view, but it's acceptable from a self point of view for as the person who's performing, that you are allowed to wear this mask. You need to do this because this is your job. This is what you're doing. And this is how you have fun. And this is what you're trying to portray. You're an artist.
And the reason that I always talk about how like people are Buddhists and they don't know it is because Buddhism as a practice instead of a religion is really just intro and retrospection. Mm-hmm. It's just looking at yourself, and they talk about how the most enlightened Buddhists are like psychonauts because they're aware of everything that's taking place within their body and within their universe at the same time because they're one with everything. When you delve into Buddhism, the only thing your teachers are telling you is look at reality under a more critical gaze. And each step that you enlighten, you just get to look at reality a little bit closer until you're fully enlightened and in nirvana and stuff, which takes an insane amount of effort. And
I'm more familiar with a different kind of enlightenment, the liberal enlightenment era.
I kind of want to bring it back to this too. At some point, Leon, there was a switch that flipped in your head, because I remember when we were young, man, our communication skills were terrible. We had issues, our friendship, we went through rocky paths through our friendship. And a lot of it was due to poor communication, lack of understanding of each other's point of views, things that now as adults, and we've kind of had a bit more worldly experience around us, can look back on it and be like, man, what the hell was going on? When did that switch flip? Like, when did you start becoming more empathetic, more communicative, more moral and ethical in your foundations?
I think I know the answer, Leon.
Yeah.
I think it's whenever he stepped on stage and realized that he was allowed to be Leon. So he started trying to find out who Leon was by research, because that's how we learn. Next question.
That was your explanation earlier. You said
That's
that
That's a pretty good answer. Yeah.
Next question.
Because it's like, how do you begin to try to understand other people when you don't understand yourself yet?
Yeah.
When you're already having that internal conflict, like you're struggling with your own identity crisis. Like, how do you learn who someone else is and then begin to empathize with what someone else is until you're already there, So, I mean, Aaron's probably right, but I think probably more to add on to that, because I don't want to leave that completely, what I mean?
Please answer. Yeah.
I think whenever I was shown how wrong I was about things, I thought I had everything figured out, basically, whenever I was a lot younger. I thought I had.
We think we're so smart when we're young. Trust me. We think we are smarter than the generation behind us, because I don't know why. I thought I had the same thing. I thought I was smarter than the people around me, than the adults around me,
I used to know everything.
It's always kind of like this thing that we all just go through, like I thought I had everything figured out. I thought I knew all the answers on, I'm never going to open up this fucking religious conversation because there is no God, It's like, It was like that edgelord kind of shit,
Yep. The flying spaghetti monster. Yep. Everyone's favorite thing to
FSM,
throw
baby, let's
around
go.
out there.
Pastafarians unite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pastafarian. Yeah. But it doesn't even, it extends beyond that. Like all the other stuff, like all the other sorts of conversations that we've been having. But it's like, once you figure out how wrong you are like, okay, what else have I been wrong about? You know what I mean? Like, what else have I gotten wrong? Then you start thinking about, like, who have I wronged? Who have I closed off a relationship prematurely when it never had to have been,
Step 4, taking accountability, I think, is where you would be on a 12-step program. I think that's step 4. Mike, let me know.
We know you're listening, Mike.
Or Dad.
But it's like, with Aaron, whenever we were kids, I was like coming into this world thinking like I knew everything. And Aaron was like actually knew what he was doing. He actually practiced Shaolin and stuff, and I never did. I practice some stuff now, Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, but like I'm still not that amazing at it. I don't claim to be a big badass. The difference is that I actually do something now. Like I found that before it was all just fiction. It was all just stories.
Mm-hmm.
And actually another thing too, that gets back to that. You remember Cedric, Tim?
I remember the name, but my memory of like childhood and stuff.
It's been a lifetime since then.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
That was the character that you made for that last game that we played. Do you remember?
Yes, the fisherman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the fisherman stories and stuff.
The casting the net with the hopes of getting nothing.
Yeah, dude. I still remember all of your guys's, because Will played, he called himself Unhar Raja or something like that.
Right. He was like a barbarian.
I think so. No, he was a fighter. He was a fighter. And he came off of he came from like a coastal island or something like that. His character's name was like Unhar Raja or something. And then Levi, he made Arbor, and he fucking loved that. It was like a half giant or something like that. Half
troll.
I think so. Yeah. Some, Levi, he loves his big character races.
Yeah.
I don't know if you realize it yet, but I copied that game.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. You never knew that.
No, I didn't.
I did that because I was trying to impress you guys. Put on the typical Leon show, very similar to like how I went through with Aaron.
Right.
I didn't copy all of it. Some of it was like material that came from some of my brother's old games and stuff, and I just kind of reworked it.
Yeah.
So you're a good plagiarist.
I guess.
What did you copy it from, though?
Chrono Cross.
Ah, okay. I never really played Chrono Cross, so I definitely wouldn't have gathered that. Because I remember, I think one of the things I talked about with you in the past couple of months, too, was like, yeah, man, I remember playing Dungeons and Dragons with you. You were always a great DM and stuff. Are you telling me right now that you were always plagiarizing?
Not always, no.
I'm just teasing you, dude.
The very first game that we played that I got you guys into it, that was all like original stuff.
Except the Fatal Frame rip of the guy with the scissors.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
The villain or whatever. Yeah, I made it. Yeah, that game was. Oh my god, it was so dumb.
You made it very clear. You told us that it was a rip of that character when we first started playing the game. So.
Yeah, well, at least I did that.
Yeah, you made it clear.
Of course, it's not like a big crime. You know what I mean? It was
No,
like it
not
was
at
a
all.
game that we played as kids.
We were like 15, 16. Like you might have been 17. I can't remember. How much stuff have I ripped from my Dungeons and Dragons games? I don't care. If the game works, it works.
Well, I mean, like for anyone else who's listening, that's just like, oh, plagiarism. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Like,
If anyone wants to crucify any of us, you can find us. What's
Yeah.
up? I'm Aaron.
I'm Tim. That's Leon.
We all have really sick tattoos, so if you want to commemorate those, please.
What I do want to point out, though, in relation to what you're saying, though, Leon, is you tried to create this image of yourself, right? Like you're the best fucking dungeon master we're ever gonna have. You're the best fucking metal vocalist in the Mid-Ohio Valley because you're the only fucking person we know who does it. And you're like, bro, I know my shit. None of us have met you beforehand, so who's to say you didn't live in fucking Ireland for a year and a half and study with some kind of master who made you wear a kilt everywhere and you ripped the heart out of a boar? I completely forgot about that story until Aaron said it yesterday. So you can thank him for reviving that. And then I remember at one point you were like teaching us to use weapons or something. I can't remember, man, but like my memory has gone to shit over the years.
You're good. No, I remember like we used to beat the shit out of each other with sticks and stuff.
I remember the sticks, yeah.
And then Tim was like, hey, I learned this thing from Leon. And he tried to show me and I kicked him. And I was like, it didn't work.
Yeah, and then Aaron and I would continually get into a fight because I'd always want to fight Aaron and Aaron would beat me up and I'd still keep going. I don't know why.
Yeah, Chris told me about all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know why that ever happened.
We have an innate drive to push ourselves and test each other against for whatever reason.
You have to challenge your friends, and challenging your friends is a great way to challenge your friends. So
you have to challenge
them.
yourself, and challenging those nearest to you is how we words.
We said it before. Challenge your friends. Challenge yourself. Challenge everything.
Challenge your beliefs.
Challenge your emotions. Don't just go with the first thing. Understand why your emotions are there.
Challenge your very fucking existence.
Yes, because it's not real.
Challenge the Pastafarians, because if one more fucking person tells me that they worship a flying spaghetti monster because it's just as believable as following any religion, then shut up.
Do you salt your pasta water? Because if not, don't talk to me like you're a Pastafarian.
Do you eat your pasta al dente? You're not from Naples, Italy, or Italy in general?
Then ligma.
Yeah. What does that mean? What's ligma?
Thanks for joining us. Seriously, though. Thank you for joining us, Leon.
And thank all of you for joining us.
This has been Aaron.
And Tim with Leon.
A huge thank you to Hyland Markle for the original music.
Send this episode to whoever popped into your head while listening.
Comment below with what you want to hear us talk about next week.
And tag somebody we should bring on the podcast.
All pertinent links can be found in the episode description.
Be good to yourselves and each other.
We love you.
Peace.